Each week I talk to an inspiring guest, and this week you can see I'm out on my travels. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm somewhere in Illinois at the moment for a big wrestling week. However, I've still found time to talk to today's guest. Today's guest is the wonderful, the inspirational Debbie Bryant. You'll hear how Defiance saved her leg, and you'll hear the amazing things she done once she finally got out of the hospital. I don't want to spend too long talking about the wonderful Debbie Bryant. You can get straight into Debbie Bryant's story yourself. So, without further ado, let's get stuck in.
Well, it's not I don't take no for an answer. It's I just believe there's a yes. And if you're telling me no, then I need to go and find the person who's got the yes answer. When I woke up after my operation, I had 2 plates and 22 screws in my leg. For anyone else who thinks that they are in this bad place and they don't know, like they can't pick themselves up, I want to be that person who puts their hand out and says, come on, there's a hope.
I say hope. Hold on, pain ends. Hold on, pain ends. That's what it is. Like, get through this. Get through this hard bit. Get through this shit bit, because happiness is around the corner.
I was just like, do you know what? If other people can do this, then I can do this.
But we focus on the difficult times, the hard times, the shit times, when people are emotional and vulnerable. But there's so many, like, if you're willing to look, there's loads of funny things. There's loads of funny things, like...
Cycled through a village and these boys were coming out of school and my shorts rolled down and they chased me through the village, taking pictures and laughing at me. So, you know, I was never the ideal cyclist at all.
I get shivers all the time, in a good way. I haven't got, like gonorrhea or anything. I don't know why I said that. Of all the things I'm going to say. So, Debbie, it's an absolute honour to have you on the Getting Back Up podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're very welcome. This podcast is all about, this is an inspirational podcast where I talk to people that have done great things in both their life and or career, but only after or amid suffering massive setback. This is people's weekly dose of hope and inspiration. I get, and it's one of the favourite things I do, actually, talk to people and learn their story. And your story is literally remarkable. It's wonderful. It's super inspiring. And over the next hour or so, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. But I truly believe the most important question that I'm going to ask you today is the first one. And I would really like an honest and sincere response, please, as I know I will get from you. So, question 1, how the bloody hell are you, Debbie?
I am absolutely fantastic at the moment. Life is amazing, absolutely amazing. I just got invited to do a TED Talk last week. So that was one of my dream lists, top of my Christmas tree, North Stars. So yeah, I'm buzzing at the minute.
So for those of you who don't know, well, actually, massive congratulations. I knew that already, so that's why I didn't. Okay, but massive congrats. I was going to introduce. You stole my intro, Debbie, because I was going to use that as my intro.
It's in my head. You know, it's in my head. So
listen, if I had a TED Talk, if I'd been asked to talk for TED, I'd be telling every Tom, Dick, and Harry. So please don't apologise. But for those of you who don't know who you are, 'cause on this podcast I like to blend like famous people, sportsmen, sportswomen, and also, you know, everyday regular folk. And personally, being a sportsman, a former sportsman, an Olympian, like, don't get me wrong, like, sports stories are amazing, because I think sport, especially boxing, what I did is a microcosm of life. The things that you go through in a 12-week training camp for boxing, or in a fight, you get knocked down, you get back up. Hence the name Getting Back Up. The things we go through in a boxing contest, in a boxing fight, like, that's echoed in life, right? Like, you get knocked down in life. And that's why Rocky was the first sports movie ever to win the best Oscar, because it's not really about boxing. Of course it is, but it's about life. It's about Rocky Balboa living his life in the boxing ring that echoed in his real life, getting knocked down, always getting back up, you know, overcoming adversity. And that's what this is about. So I like to blend everyday people, like normal folk, regular folk, in with the sporting superstars and the people. And then your story, as I've said, is so super inspiring. But for those that don't know who you are, allow me to do a little mini intro.
Okay.
You're an international award-winning executive coach. That's fascinating. I want to talk about that. A motivational speaker. Wow. A coach for 25 years, a master practitioner, a podcaster, an author, a mother, a grandmother, and just a really strong woman. And I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Strong people, strong women, strong individuals. And as I said, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. There's a specific thing we're going to talk about today, like a special moment in your life. That's why we're kind of talking. That's why you've got the TED Talk. And we're going to dive into that. But that's your story to tell. I'm not going to steal it from you. What is the almost miraculous thing that happened to you? And, the comeback. Please tell me. Enlighten me and enlighten all the listeners and viewers here.
12 years, I suppose 12 and a half years ago, I was a really happy girl. I had a hairdressing salon. I was in a gym. I was all about that exercise. Everybody in the gym was either coming to my classes or, if you're in that sporting world, when you're in a fitness environment, it's very, very encompassing. So that was my world. My world was either people coming to my salon because they were skiving a class, they were about to teach a class, or they'd just been to a class. So I'd just taken over from my business partner, decided that I would go and buy a car. So the car was, we call it an old banger in the UK. So basically it was a cheap runaround car. We'd had company cars and I had a beer in my bonnet.
So let me just jump in. You said that like I'm not from England. You said that like I'm foreign.
I did, didn't I?
I get what an old banger is. I know exactly. Okay. I've had a few old bangers in my time.
Well, I was going to call it a jalopy, and I thought, that's a step too far, an old jalopy. My dad's a second-hand car dealer, or was retired now. So yeah, it's like a 600-700 quid car, right? Because I was sick of having company cars and have to worry about mileage, so determined to go and buy this car. We go from where I live in Swindon to Coventry, buy the car. It's okay. It's a run around. We drive it back. It's January the 31st. And my husband drives this car back that I chose because he's quite sweet like that. And we actually had
the old banger, the sloppy jalopy.
Yeah, sloppy jalopy with flowers on it. I'll have you know. So it was a converter with flowers on it. And he drove that back most of the way. And we'd had another accident and we had a leased BMW. So it's a beautiful BMW, brand new, 50 miles on the clock, and I drove that. So I had a bit of an attack of guilt on the way home of like, he should be driving this one and I should drive the other one because it was my choice. So I was trying to flag him down, couldn't. Got to the services about 15 miles away from where I live. So we've done a journey, and I managed to get him. He's like, what's the matter? And I said, you take this nice car, go and pick up my boys. I have 3 boys. Go and pick them up from college or wherever. And I'll take this one, go to shop and meet you at home. So we get back onto the dual carriageway and he drives off and I drive this car that we've driven, 40 miles ago, and the power goes out in the car. Everything stops on the car and I'm on the dual carriageway, 6:30 at night, in the fast lane, obviously, and I've got nothing, literally nothing, no lights, no power, no nothing on the car. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I get it to the side of the road, I drift to the side of the road just past the junction. And I thought, well, what can be wrong? Maybe we've run out of petrol because there wasn't a huge amount in it. So I phone him up and say, can you go and get me some petrol? And he does a loop around back to the services, gets that. Actually, 10 minutes later, so I've been sat in the car for a while. I had no fear of where I was. It wasn't a proper hard shoulder. So I could feel the lorries just kind of like going past and rocking me, but they could still go past, right? I was off the road, but it was January. So I was like, how far on the grass can I go when I'm not going to get stuck?
And just, you said it was, obviously, it's 6 p.m., 6:30 January, very dark, wet, miserable.
Yeah.
You had no power. Were your hazards on?
No, I had nothing.
And you stayed in the car?
Stayed in the car because I was an idiot, but I didn't realise like the whole thing because I'd never been involved in a crash. But that's not how I got injured. So he then pulled up like 2 car lengths behind me, which apparently is normal. But I was just like, what are you doing over there? Why can't you pull up? So I jumped out of the car.
Come and save me. Come and save. Yeah, I've seen Pretty Woman. Richard Gere comes up in a limousine and he comes to the window. I get it.
Yeah, but he's off the road, yeah. And so as I run around to the petrol cap, which is on the roadside, I probably wouldn't have even known how to undo the petrol cap when I think back now, but I must have thought about it. My biggest fear was I had 1 bar left on my phone, right? That was all I was worried about. It's such a dolly thing to think about. And he pulls up, a car drives into the back of him for no reason. Bang, straight into the back of this BMW. And I was like, wow, what's happened? And I remember thinking, okay, he looks okay. The car's just shunted forward. But then the car carried on coming. So he was stopped, but this car, afterwards I learned, had lost a wheel, ripped off at the axle. He'd hit so hard. kind of curls round and then is coming to where I am, stood next to this car. And I was just thought, well, I don't know where I can go. You know, this is a dual carriageway that is a very dangerous dual carriageway. And I think he's going this side of my car, so there's nowhere for me to run. And I literally remember thinking, and it felt like forever. And I could tell you word for word what I thought, but it felt like forever. And I remember thinking, I'm going to die and this is going to hurt. And watching this car. And then I just thought, no, I'm not going. I'm not going to die. I'm not going. My boys need me. Jake's not old enough. They think they're old enough, or they're not old enough, and I'm not going. And then randomly, without even realizing, took 2 steps away from this petrol cap. I don't even know what direction I took the 2 steps, but I took these 2 steps. And when the car hit, my car hit exactly where I was, where I'd been stood those 2 steps away from. Did hit my leg, and I was still stood. And I remember feeling like, wow, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought, but I feel like I'm standing on ice. My foot was just kind of like slip sliding around. And as the car went past, it was on like the underside here. And as it went past, it cuffed me on the shoulder and spun me around. And at that point, it winded me and I fell onto all fours. And when I looked up from being on all fours, I could feel all the crunchiness of the car, you know, the indicators and stuff. And when I looked up, I was in the lane in the dual carriageway. And I was like, bugger, I'm going to have to, and now I'm really going to die. I'm going to have to do it. So then I had to crawl to the side of the road. And I just knew when I got to the side of the road, and there wasn't loads of blood, you know, I had a broken nail and a little cut here, and that was my damage. And I just knew that I couldn't stand on the leg, but I thought it was just bruised. I really just thought it was bruised. I thought there's no blood, no harm done. My car, I don't know how the logistics of it were, but my car was headfirst into the central reservation. He'd flicked it headfirst into the central reservation and was a write-off. So we waited for the ambulance to come. Ambulance took me to the hospital, and I just thought, it's bruised, and it's fine. You know, it's just bruised. It wasn't painful. I don't know what they gave me. It wasn't painful. I remember my son saying to me, Mum, it's definitely not bruised. By the time I got to hospital, all my 3 boys were there, and they all took me off for x-rays, etc. So they came back to me and said, you know, the leg is broken. We're going to operate in the morning. Take me up to the ward. Next day they come to me and say, we can't operate. It's too swollen. So we'll wait for the surgeon to come round. So at this point, I'm a little bit worried about my business because I think, well, this is not right. You know, I've got a salon. I'm running. I've taken over from someone else. The interesting thing for me, and you'll discover that I used to be a workaholic, I still am. But the interesting thing for me was like when that car was coming for me, there was no business. There was no flat stomach. There was no, I need to do this. The only thing that was in my mind was my family. The only thing. Even my manager was on the other side of the road. I called her and said, you might have to bring me some petrol. And she said she was sat in the traffic thinking, God, I better not have to go and get her some petrol because look at this traffic. And the traffic was caused by me being like crashed into the car. So that's kind of what happened that pivoted and changed my life. I suppose the next day when the surgeons came to me, they told me that I was similar to like yourself when you've had an injury, really. They came to me very excited and very bouncy because the surgeons are, it's just like Grace. It's just like any medical program. They're like, right, okay, we're going to do this. Really excited. And they were like, we can save the leg, but you won't be able to use it. You're going to lose and I'm like, what? I just went and bought a car. And I just said to them, no. I have a hairdressing salon. I'm in a gym. I do body pump. I write about it. Then that can't be right. And to my, not even surprise, I suppose, they went away. They just walked away and said, okay. And I just thought, they're going to come back with another solution. I never at any point thought I was negotiating with them. I never knew that I had a choice. And then they came back and said, okay, we've got a better plan now. You're going to be able to save the leg, but you're not going to be able to bend the knee. And you're not going to be able to stand on it for very long. And I was like, no, you're not listening to me. You're just not listening. I'm telling you, I have a hair salon. I'm in a gym. How am I meant to pay my bills, pay my staff? How am I meant to do the gym? How am I meant to look after my children? If I can't use my leg, that can't be right. That just isn't the right answer. And then they came back one more time, which I don't remember. And then they came back a 4th time. So about a day later, they came back a 4th time and said, right, here it is. We've got this brilliant plan now. we're going to take some bone out of your hip. We're going to rebuild the knee. We're going to make like a little saucer and we're going to balance some stuff there. And then we're going to dig deep into the bone marrow. And I was like, okay, stop. I'm not a boiled egg. The digging deep thing, I don't need to know. Just do that. And they were like, okay. And I don't know. I never had a lot of injuries. I did have a car accident when I was a kid, but I was a kid. But I thought, you're a broken leg, 6 weeks, a cast, all back to normal, right? That's my knowledge of a broken leg. I could not have been more wrong. When I woke up after my operation, I had 2 plates and 22 screws in my leg. So it was no cast. I had a cage on my leg and I had 6 months of non-weight bearing. So I didn't walk for 6 months. So that was quite a shock, a little bit of a shock. But the one thing I did have, which is madness, was I was the luckiest person in the world.
That I want to go back and unpick because there's moments there, and then we do this when we when I have people, we as a people we do this. I have people on my podcast, and they throw away, they just say things, and because they're so used to saying things or so used to telling their story is very common to them but unique to us, and they throw away these big things and like big moments, and you've said numerous things along the way which I'm going to jump back in and talk about.
Feel free.
The first thing you said here was repeat. So before I pulled the cable out of my ear, what did you say just now?
I said that I was the luckiest person in the world.
Yes, perspective.
Yeah.
And I had a guy on my podcast recently called Tony Jeffries, and Tony Jeffries is a his life and his career is scarily similar to mine, like weird. But in short, we both won bronze medals at the Olympic Games. He won in boxing. He won his medal in Beijing in 2008. I won mine in London 4 years later. So I'm like literally 4 years younger than him. So wow. 4 years cycle behind him. And Tony, and we both had we both had to retire from boxing at 27 years old. He had bad hands. He had bad hand injuries and just couldn't punch without breaking his hands. Ooh. I basically blinded my left thigh. I was forced to retire, and ultimately I walked around with, and this is perspective, and that's what I love. And I know your husband has a very different perspective, and that's what I want to touch upon.
Yes.
When I walked around for the next 8 years after the Olympic Games, it took me 8 years to be proud of my achievements at the Olympics, because I was very bitter and I was upset of what I didn't win. I was upset at not winning a gold and only getting a bronze. Whereas Tony Jeffries had a very, very almost identical experience to me. We're so unbelievably proud of just being an Olympian and winning a medal. And ultimately what I'm saying is we've lived and he gave me a life lesson. There's like a 5-minute bit in my podcast with Tony Jeffries. He gave me a life lesson. He taught me just from his own experiences about perspective. And there's a quote, and I say it quite a lot in my podcast now because it's so unbelievably true. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And ultimately, had I been proud of my achievements, and which I am now I am. It took me a long time to get there. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a bit annoyed and a bit bitter about some things, but I'm proud of my achievements now, and I'd have been happier. I'd have been a happier me. And that's our true currency, really, is like happiness in life. Like, I'd have been a happier version, and I've kind of wasted or I've flown by a lot of experiences in my life just because I was annoyed and pissed off and I didn't get what I believe I should have got.
I so get that.
But with your perspective, you bought a new car. Again, you bought a new sloppy jalopy. By the way, for English people who don't know what a sloppy jalopy is, sloppy obviously, but rubbish. Jalopy is a form of an old car. So basically, Americans say it for an old banger, right? And then you just bought an old banger. But ultimately, I've bought new old bangers. And some of my favourite cars are old bangers. You know, like you mentioned it was convertible as well.
Yeah, convertible, of course.
I've had a
flowers on it. Flowers on it. My son said to me, "Mum, that's what you get for buying a car with flowers on it. That's what happens when you buy a car with flowers on it. They don't perform.
They don't perform well."
And he's working for Formula E at the moment, so I guess his opinion was probably more.
So he counts more than us regular folk.
Yeah.
But that happened. You bought a new car. And then that happened. You're also, another thing to mention, your poor husband who saw and sat through not just the whole the incident, but also the next 6 months you've been able to bear any weight and all the stuff. So your husband, take my hat off to him, young man. Well done, sir.
I was a terrible patient as well. I was a very impatient patient, as you can imagine.
I was then going to say, I can imagine that. I can imagine that, Debbie.
I would, like, if nobody knew what I wanted to do, I would like take stuff out of the fridge and chuck it over the kitchen, because I would be like, nobody's doing what I want them to do right now, so I'll just do that. I was a very impatient patient.
I get it. I get that. Poor family, poor husband. But however, saying that, in that moment, like you said, you felt like you're the luckiest person in the world.
Yeah, so I should be in the morgue. That's the thing. I was like, I should be in the morgue. If I'd not taken
100%.
those 2 steps, like, what happened is this guy had stopped. I didn't know that this guy had stopped the traffic, and he came to the hospital the next day. This van driver, and I don't know who he is. So if you ever listen to the podcast, please do get in touch. And he came in and said, "Those 2 steps you took saved your life."
Because it would,
And I was just
exactly.
like, yeah.
And that's the whole thing about perspective. And a friend of mine, Tony Garkin, she's also got a great podcast out there, Talks with Tony. She's a very good friend of mine, and
Love
she
Tony.
often talks about perspective. And for example, if she's taught me a lot. She's a lovely, amazing woman, Tony Garkin. She if someone's rude to you, oftentimes we think, used to think, oh, they're just a dickhead, or they're just this, or they're just that. You have no idea what they're going through. They could be, looking after their dying dad, their dying mother, their children could be on. And if them being a bit abrupt, might not be being rude. They're just going through some shit in life, as we all do. So she's taught me a lot. And again, this whole perspective thing. You thought you were the luckiest person in the world, even though you just now bought a new car and you've been hit by a car, your legs all sorts of smashed up.
Yeah.
But your husband, and I've heard you say this in the past, so unbelievably unfair. Why you? Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And you both lived a similar experience, but a totally different perspective. And
Massively.
That's the main thing. And one of you got, obviously we're going to talk more about your story and the things you did after the accident, because that's unbelievably inspiring. The comeback story is so inspiring. But the main thing, my takeaway from hearing your story, is all about perspective. And I'm on this perspective bandwagon at the minute, so I'm now trying to change my perspective. But it's just when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I just want to say that I wanted to make that point at this part of your story, because it's a tremendous story. And if anything you want to talk about or elaborate about that, or how your husband was and what things he went through, I know
he was angry, really, really angry, like really angry with the driver. We don't know why he smashed into us. I don't know if he was on his phone. There was no reason. There's no logical reason why the guy smashed.
Were there any repercussions? Did he get in trouble, or was he hurt?
No, not really. He wasn't hurt. He was fine. And some way down the line, he had a caution and maybe 3 points. But for a lot of the times, he didn't turn up in court. And there's a funny story, actually. He never came to see me. He never had any contact. And then as I recovered, I grew the business. So I went from 1 room in a gym eventually to a 10-room spa. Had a photo studio and a hair salon and 10 beauty rooms and jacuzzi and all sorts of things. And we did teeth whitening, and he came in as a teeth whitening customer.
Had no idea that was your place.
He didn't know, but he made his booking. I had to call him for the booking and I said to him, did you have an accident? I knew his name. Did you have an accident a couple of years ago? I was the person that you hit. When he came in, such a weird
And he still came in?
And he still came in, yeah. On a Groupon, right? When he came in...
On a Groupon,
I know. So,
on a Groupon.
I know, on a Groupon.
Explain it for those that don't know what a Groupon is. Explain what that is and why that's such a piss take.
So basically, we had teeth whitening with like £99, and we had an offer on like a deal site for like £19, and he bought this deal site coupon. And it was non-refundable and stuff like that. So I told him who I was on the phone. When he came in, I was there. He just completely blanked me. On that day, I'd had my first steroid injection in my knee. No, my second, I think. So I'd had this massive steroid injection into my knee because I was struggling to walk and struggling with the pain. And
they're not pleasant, are they?
No.
Injection,
They are like massive needles. And I
Yeah,
had that,
yeah.
and he came in and said, I don't know if I should have this because I've got a sore throat. And I was like, oh my God, I think I might have to kill you. I might have to kill you. And I just said to the girls, take him up, get a treatment, don't sell him anything else. He's barred, he's not coming
Yeah.
in. But he had no, whether he didn't know what to say, or there was no empathy, there was no, hey, are you okay now? Or just nothing, completely just blanked it. So he was quite young at the time, and my children were around that age. I think Jake was probably, my eldest was about 19, and I think he was about 21. And I was like, well, he's made a mistake. And if my son had made a mistake and had an accident, and I was really kind to him, to be honest, in my head until that day. And then I was like, actually, no, you're a tosser. And
Yeah.
there's no more about it. So I won't say his name. He'll know who he is.
Yeah.
But that was like a couple of years down the line as such. So there was nothing really for him. He didn't come to see me.
Yeah, forget him. Do you know what? Forget. Let's go back to you. Let's not give this guy any more energy. Let's go back to your story.
As I say, from my husband's point of view, he is somebody who's ex-forces, and he's used to looking after people, and he couldn't cope with the fact that he couldn't help me at that time, that he was trying to help me and he couldn't help me. So there was lots of anger from him and lots of me saying, I don't understand why you're upset. I could be in the morgue, I'm here. So there was quite a lot of like disconnect there. And obviously he was home looking after the kids and stuff like that. So there was, it's not, there is lots of things I could tell you that is not quite as upbeat as things. Some funny things, being in the hospital and a guy that I'd cut his hair the week before in David Lloyd, and he came and told me that he was my nurse. And if I needed a bedpan, he was the man that was going to do it. I was like, I'm getting out of bed. That is not happening. He's like, when I take a picture of you, put it on the wall at David Lloyd, they had this in these terrible, like the Golden Girls. I had three really old ladies in the room with me, and we were like the Golden Girls. They kept putting us in hospital nighties, and he came in and he's like, I'm so going to take a picture, but if you want a bedpan today, I'm your man. And I was like, I am getting out of this bed. And they moved in somewhere else. So yeah, there was some funny things in there.
Let's talk about. I've heard you say when I've researched for this podcast. I've heard you say, and again, I get this. I've known you now for half an hour, and I get this. You do not take no for an answer.
No, I don't. Well, it's not I don't take no for an answer. It's I just believe there's a yes. And if you're telling me no, then I need to go and find the person who's got the yes answer. So I just believe you're the
When
wrong person.
when I heard you that when I heard you say that for the first time, I got a little bit. I get shivers all the time, in a good way. I haven't got
Mm.
like gonorrhea or anything. I don't know why I said that. Of all the
Terrible
things I'm gonna say, I
comparison.
don't want to. Lawrence, edit this bit out, mate. But no,
No, leave
I
it
get
in, leave it in.
goosebumps. You will as well.
Every time
I
someone
get
searches that term will come up.
I get goosebumps. I'm a sponge for inspiration, and I can be inspired by Tony Bellew winning the world title in his third attempt after being knocked out. No, the previous attempt. I can be inspired by the single mother raising kids. I can be inspired by anything, and I love when I get that that um the
It's like a
involuntary
frizz-on, isn't it?
shiver down my spine, yeah, and the goosebumps on my arm. I love it, and I heard you say that before, and you are a woman of my own heart because I'll tell you some stories about me in a minute. Um, if you hear no, you haven't found the right person yet. There's
Yeah,
a
you
yes
just look
out
into the
there if only you're
absolutely.
willing to find it, and that's like happy. Like, there's yeah, I love that. I got tingles when I heard you say that, and that's so true. There's a yes out there. You got to look for it, and I've done that
Absolutely.
my entire life.
Yeah, I mean, you
And
must have done it in, boxing when you've kind of got beat and gone, okay, so that was a no, but I know that I can win this. I've just got to go and find the right way, the right solution, the right method. I think when I was to make up a photo studio and people were looking at pictures and I'd say, what do you like? And they would say, I love them. But so I'm like, okay, so there's a deal to be done here. I just need to work out what the deal is. I need to know what it is that matches in your head to what you want. And so with the yeses, I mean, the yes does come from my mum. The no and the yes thing comes from my parents. And I only really realised like last year that my dad says no to everything, still does actually. Could we go to school disco? No. Could I go to my friends? No. Everything was a no. And so eventually my mum would work on him, and a week later we'd go to the school disco and she'd buy us this little, she loves a little bit of velvet or satin, my mum. She still dresses in it now. But me and my sister would go. And so eventually I worked out that actually, why am I even asking him? Because he's just going to say no. So I asked my mum first, I'll get a yes, because she'll do what she did before and I don't have to go through the no. So I think that's where I learned that actually there is a yes. You just have to go and ask the right person, the person who
Yeah,
wants to give you the yes.
and sometimes you've got to. I agree. If you get a no, sometimes you've got to look for the yes. Sometimes you've got to search for the yes. Sometimes you've got to hunt the yes,
You just got to believe there's a yes. You got to believe there's a yes.
and be willing to put the work in to go and find
Hmm.
it.
How good
And a
job.
no is much easier. And you said something in the podcast. Had you adjust, obviously, we're going to talk more about the comeback story in a moment because it's a phenomenal feat of strength and belief and a great comeback story. But you've got your leg now is great, and you're able to do really cool stuff. And you said before, like, what if you'd have just said yes when the doctor
Yeah.
came in the first time? And I'm now going to tell you something, which is literally life or death. My mum suffered a brain aneurysm back in 2012, 5 weeks before the Olympics. And I saved all the emotion around it, but it was one of the worst days of my life.
I can
And
imagine.
yeah, I was up in Sheffield training on the Great Britain team. The Olympics, as I said, were a month and a bit away. Jumped in my car, flew back to my hometown, walked in the hospital. My nan was there, my sister was there. They kind of like threw their arms around me like I was going to save the day. And it was horrible, scary. And I walked in, my mum's all hooked up to a machine. My mum's my hero, my biggest inspiration, my hero. Hooked up to a machine, breathing. And I got pulled into a little room by a young doctor, a junior doctor, and he explained to me the bleed that my mum had on her brain, subarachnoid bleed in the back of the brain, is really bad. And he basically said he explained what happened, and you know she was basically gone. He said, and as a throwaway comment, he said the only place they could do anything was Addenbrooke's in Cambridge. He said, but we've spoken to them and they got no beds available. But anyway, that being said, it's so bad, but we're going to turn off
Wow.
the life support machine. So I sat there and I'm quite an impassioned, emotional young man. I was back then, 11, 12, 13 years ago. And I sat there and I went, I said, well, can you please just send there to Addenbrooke's, please? He said, no, you're not hearing me, Mr. Ogogo. They can't do anything because X, Y, Z. It's a really bad bleed, and there's no beds available. And I said, no, I understand that, but you said the only place that could do something is Addenbrooke's, and I'd very much appreciate it if she could be sent there to be examined by the doctors, at least looked at. He said to me, no, we can't. I took a second, and for a third time, very politely, I said, please, sir, can you please send my mum to Addenbrooke's to be examined by the doctors? He said no. And this guy was, listen, I'm not making him out to be a bad guy. He wasn't a bad guy. He was doing his job.
Yeah.
Young doctor, inexperienced. Probably said the wrong thing. And the fourth time, I had a weird moment like from the movies where I just saw red, and I don't know what I said. I don't know what I did. But I remember he left. The door shut. And as the door shut in his little office, I kind of came back in the room. And I was breathing heavier. And I was like, my skin was hot. So I knew I'd got the ump. I'd got a bit angry.
Just a little bit. I don't blame you. No, I don't blame you.
Yeah, I got emotional in this moment. He left and he came back. It could have been a minute, it could have been 20. I have no idea because that time was a blur. And he said to me, right, he said, we've just spoken to Addenbrooke's. He said, a bed's opened up. He
Wow.
said, we're going to send her. We're going to blue light her to the hospital. He said, look, I'm just letting you know, don't get your hopes up. I said, thank you, sir. Thank you. They took ambulance, took her to Addenbrooke's. Anyway, it's now, we're the back end of, what are we now, almost 2024. So 12 and a half years later, 12 or 13 years, my mum's still alive. She's still alive.
Wow.
And living her best life. At the time, she had 3 grandkids. Now she's got 9 grandkids. She's moved house. She's got a bonus 10 years of life, which she wouldn't have had if I didn't get the ump. And the point I'm making is, if I'd have accepted that first, thank you.
Totally,
She'd have
yeah.
been gone there.
But he gave you such a mixed message to say, look, there's no hope. There is hope, but we're not going to give you that hope. That's such a strange message to go. There is one tiny thing you can do, but we're not going to let you do that because there's not a bed. I would have reacted exactly the same.
I think it was a throwaway. As I said, it was a young doctor, quite inexperienced. I think it was a throwaway comment. I think he was just saying like, this hospital, James Paget, it's not a particularly big hospital. Adam Brooks is a very good one in East Anglia.
Yeah.
And he said, and I, so I don't know what happened in that 20-minute period. I don't know if somebody had passed away or been, I don't know what happened. But anyway, she went and she's still alive. Point I'm making is, there's always a yes out there. Now, of course, not everyone's going to be that fortunate. And linking back into what I was saying before, perspective, my mum, to her, bless her, she was living life one day, early 50s, and had a brain aneurysm. She was in a coma for a long time, come out, and she's got parts of her brain have been damaged, don't work as well now because of a really bad brain bleed that she wasn't supposed to live. She was a bit of a miracle she survived. And my mum, for a long time, feels like your husband fell. It's not fair. Why me? Boom, 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 boom. And I get it. And I've never gone through something like that. I get to, actually, not as bad, but like my eye in boxing, I have to retire from boxing. Why me? Not fair. I don't get hit very much. This guy gets punched all the time. How come his eyes are okay and my eyes are bad? I went through that. But then I've been saying to my mum for years, and I'm now only kind of taking my own advice. She's been given a second chance at life. Because so many people, we know, one of those things where when something happens, and then I knew what a brain aneurysm was before her, but I don't know anybody who died from it. Now you're more privy to, now I hear people die all the time from it.
Yeah.
And bleeds much less bad than hers. So if my mum looked at it, and now she's getting there now, it's taking a while, and again, I'm not trying to trivialise this, I can't imagine how hard it is for someone to lose so much of their life from this horrible injury kind of thing, brain injury. But if you look at the world in a certain way, if you realise, this happened, but I'm so lucky to be given another chance at being alive, rather than, I could do this before, now I can't do this. You just change. And I think,
I suppose for me, it was a little bit different. I thought that I might get better. I thought I would get back to normal, for example. So a little bit of me was like, so one, I was like, right, I'm the luckiest person in the world. I'm not in the morgue. Okay, there's other stuff going on. But in mine and my husband's relationship, if one of us is up and one of us is down, we have to support the down one. And then the other way around, it works. Like years ago, I lost a baby at like 25 weeks, and my husband was like the only person that I felt like I could fall apart when I had that baby.
That's sad.
It's honest. I don't talk about it normally. I don't know how I brought this on your podcast. Never talk about this. But I could fall apart because he was strong.
Those tingles, look, I told you, I've got the goosebumps. You can see that.
It was a late pregnancy, so the baby was born breathing and then wasn't breathing, but he wasn't really big enough to survive. But my husband let me fall apart that time. So maybe I just felt like it was my turn, but I was so sickly lucky. Like, I think my family wanted to euthanize me. I was like, oh, I shouldn't be here. It's Mother's Day. I shouldn't be here. It's Sunday. And I was like, sickening. I think they literally just thought, oh God, maybe she shouldn't have been. But there is one thing, just go. You're so annoying. But there is one thing I will share with you actually that might make you feel a little bit better is for 10 years, that I'm going to die is going to hurt. I beat myself for that, for not fighting straight away. I was so angry with myself that for those few seconds I'd said, I'm going to die, and accepted it rather than fighting straight away. I'm really bad at vulnerability, and I was angry at myself for 10 years until someone said to me, seriously, could you not even be vulnerable then? You couldn't even have some vulnerability for yourself that you reacted how your body would react. Because I was like, what if I'd started fighting earlier? Maybe I could have moved further away. What if I did straight away fight? What was I doing accepting that I was going to die? So I hated myself for that. A little bit of me was angry, not hating myself, but I was angry. I was annoyed. I was like, God, you could have just been 4 steps.
Could have been 4 steps, but if it had been 4 steps, we'd be talking today. You'd be doing the TED Talk, and then whether things happen for a reason or whether things happen and it's our job to find out what that reason is. I don't know. I believe the second one. I think things happen not necessarily for a reason, but things happen. It's our job. We've got the responsibilities. It's our life to go out and find out what the reason. Why did I survive? Why was my mum the lucky one and others aren't so lucky? Why were you the fortunate one? Why was your body able to take 2 steps rather than no steps, rather than 4 steps? Right? This is the whole thing. So, listen, we could talk loads about this, but I think we've covered this bit really, really well. I think all the points we've spoken about. So you go through that awful recovery, and we can talk about the recovery and some of the painful moments. But what's this amazing feat of strength, of endurance, of mental fortitude that you embarked upon doing after suffering such a nasty leg injury? 22 plates.
22 plates, I know. So I just went back into my business. I didn't fit into my own life at all because obviously I'm in a gym, I'm in a hair salon, I can't do either. And started working on the business instead of in the business. And I always just felt like I'd just done what anybody else would do. I really never felt that I'd done anything special. I was just like, I just did what everyone else would do, carried on with the business.
And sorry to jump in again. I think that shows a lot of humility, because I've learned that whilst doing this podcast, talking to other people that are successful. And I'm gonna a little segue here. By the way, Debbie, I say this to my guests on my podcast all the time. As you might have known, I've got ADHD, so my brain does this. So like,
me too.
I do this and that, and like, it's rarely a linear story. But I think they're more fun. I think they're more fun this way.
Hey, you should come and drink with me. I can do 20 different conversations in one go. It's fine. I'll be able to follow you.
Now I forgot what I was going to say. This is the bad bit. What were you saying then? I said about, what did you say just now? What did you say a second ago?
No, I've forgotten now. No. We were just talking about the fact of like, I just thought I'd done what anyone else would do.
Gotcha, yes. And I talked to different people. Gotcha, now I'm back on track. And then ultimately, like, people just do what they think is normal, but it's actually not normal, I don't think. And that's the thing, and that's why I'm so humbled. I had a friend on, he's my friend now, Martin Perry. He's a disabled table tennis player, and he's like, he was born with one working limb and no hands, or only one leg. The leg he had like lost some toes. So basically, and again, it's the perspective thing. He genuinely feels like he's the luckiest man in the world, and he's got no fully working limbs, and it's like, huh?
Yeah.
Huh? Like the guy you said, the teeth whitening guy, a guy with a sore throat. You know, it's like,
right, get out of yourself.
And Martin Perry, he generally thinks he's the luckiest man in the world. He's got a beautiful wife. He's having a baby soon. He's got the Paralympic Games in Paris next year. He's living his best life. And it's like, it's that mindset of looking at what you have rather than what you haven't got. Anyway.
No, but I did a bit of that though. So when, like, you know, I used a mobility scooter. I joined the club. They all nod at each other. First time we went away, we went to Egypt in the summer. Nod. It's like a club. I'm telling you. If you ever have to do this, Anthony, you do like a biker nod.
What if you don't? What if you don't nod? Is it disrespectful?
That's it. No, they'll just run you over the next time. They remember you.
Oh, there's Betty on a scooter. Betty!
Yeah, it was. Honestly, it's like a little club. But just don't go into Hollister. I went into Hollister and like in Bristol and got hooked on one of those tables at the back and ended up having to take the table with me. So I was like, aggressive.
But this is funny stuff. And the thing about this podcast, right, we talk about is getting back up. So we focus on the difficult times, the hard times, the shit times, when people are emotional and vulnerable. But there's so many, like, if you're willing to look, there's loads of funny things. There's loads of funny things.
Like, to get out. I just needed to, I made a point of trying to go out every day because I'm quite an active person anyway. I couldn't do what I needed to do. So my friend said to me, look, Deb, there's a place you can hire these scooters. You can get a taxi in, and then it's a mobility place. I didn't know they existed. And they'll give you a scooter and you can ride around the town and get your shopping and do whatever you want to do and then take it back and then you get a taxi home. And so I was like, I'll go and get a loaf of bread, and off I go in a taxi. And I mean, taxi drivers never ever helped you. Like, you just see you coming out the door on crutches and stuff like that. So there was some freedom. And then my physio said to me, so just before the July we were going on holiday, and she said, you need to take something with you. You're not going to be able to walk through the airport. You're not going to be able to, she looked at the resort and she said, it's huge. And I just come off a non-weight bearing. So I remember she came into the gym and we used one of the offices, and she made me stand on her feet so that she could walk me around so I could learn almost like dancing, really. So I stood on her feet and she walked me around so I didn't limp. And she was an amazing, amazing physio. But these people coming past going to the gym, we're in this glass office and they see us dancing around in the room, and they must have thought some crazy stuff going on in here. But she was like, you need to go. You need to take something with you. So I asked the mobilities and they said, we'll rent one to you for like £60 for 2 weeks. I said, oh, great. So we take it to Egypt. It's great. You get through the airport. They let you through there's like 10 of us, my cousins and stuff come. And when we got to the resort, the Egyptians had never seen a mobility scooter. I don't know what they call it in the States, so you're going to have to translate. But they'd never seen one. They didn't know what it was. They couldn't believe it. As I went into the hotel, there was a ramp like this, was really thin, and the thing slid down. So I nearly ended in the pool to start with. So that was something that I had to kind of get out and walk because I'd just been walking. But the Egyptian waiters were fascinated by these. And I discovered it's really good for drinks because it's got a really big base. So you'd be led on a sun lounger and the waiters would come over and say, do you want drinks? And next thing you know, the scooter would be gone because they would take it to the bar, get the drinks and bring it back. Honestly, it was hilarious. And then they would try and hire it off me. They tried, and I was like, it's not mine. I can't hire it to you because you might disappear somewhere.
Yeah.
And so they had all these Egyptian waiters whizzing around, and Egypt is quite well known for a bit of a dodgy stomach. You know, like most people get sort of an Egyptian belly. And everybody who had the Egyptian belly out of our group used the scooter to run to the room. So it was a multitask scooter. So
Fantastic.
it was like, come in handy, you see. Everybody now knows how to drive the scooter. But if push comes to shove, they'd be like, I'm just borrowing this and off I go.
Nice.
So, very strange. But it's, you just have to cope with these things. Taking the scooter on holiday, that's not ideal. But it was better than not going on holiday.
Yeah, but you're able to go.
I went through all of that, and I went through all of the, if I just do what they tell me to do. I am not a person who does as they're told, right? Not in any way, shape or form. Ask my husband. But I did everything that they said that I should do because I thought that it would work. I was in my head, I was like, this will work and I'll get back to where I was. So the following year after that, when I went to all of the specialists, and they said, you'll be in a wheelchair at 55, I was like, oh my God, I've got to fight with this as well now. So I was like, I've just done this fight to get better. And they're telling me that actually it's only going to be for a short period of time that I'm going to be better and I'll be in a wheelchair at 55. And so that was a shock to go, no, that's not going to happen to me.
What is success to you, Debbie?
Now I suppose if I look at me as a person, mobility, being able to move, being able to do things, being able to still be alive, is success. But one of the things I want to do now is help other people who think it's hopeless. And like for anyone else who thinks that they are in this bad place and they don't know, like they can't pick themselves up, I want to be that person who puts their hand out and says, come on, there's a hope.
Hope so important.
Yeah. And when I first started talking last year it was only last year that I started talking about this, because before that I just thought it was boring and it wasn't interesting and no one would be care anyway. One of my friends came to me who'd had breast cancer and said, I just listened to your story and it's changed my life because I thought that I had to feel ill for the rest of my life after the breast cancer. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know who told me, my surgeon or myself, but I've decided that's not going to happen anymore. And she changed her life just based on that. So that's success, helping that one person.
Yeah, unbelievably empowering. Hope, an acronym I love. I say it I've got a fitness app, and I say it a lot in my fitness app. But when I'm doing press ups or holding a plank and we're hurting, I say hope. Hold on, pain ends. Hold on, pain ends. That's what it is. Like, get through this. Get through this hard bit. Get through this shit bit, because happiness is around the corner. A better time is around the corner, and I think you did that in abundance. But let's talk about. You went through all that painful rehab, got the steroid injections, got the surgeries, the 22 plates in your leg, razzling around on your little mobility scooter in Egypt and back in England.
It's only that 1 year.
What's the massive feat that you did recently? Or what
So
massive feat you did?
I had to tell you the wheelchair bit because based on the fact that I was going to be in a wheelchair at 55, one of my friends, I was very much in okay, well, let's use it before we lose it.
Yeah.
So in terms of like for my legs, it was okay, let's use it before we lose it. One of my friends said, hey, I'm going to do this bike ride in India. Do you fancy it? So I just signed up. 360 kilometers.
Oof.
My caveat is that it was a 10-day trip and I thought 360 kilometers, 10 days. Yeah, that's fine. I can do that. And then I paid the deposit and then they sent the itinerary and you only cycle for 5. And so I was like, oh, that's not quite what I thought it was, 25 miles a day. It was 64k the first day, 100k the next day. So I was very much like, okay, well, I'm in it now. I've got loads of time to practice. It was, it's after the lockdown and it was miles away. And then it got closer and closer and closer. And so I was just like, do you know what? If other people can do this, then I can do this. When I look at things like your friends, the Paralympian.
Debbie, just that right there. That's what this podcast is all about, and I want the listeners to hear that and really absorb that. If other people can do this, then so can I. Why
Yeah,
can't I? This isn't, and that's the thing. This is why I like, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way whatsoever. This is why I like regular folk, non-Olympians, non-sports people, because some people can see a Tony Bellew, a Tony Jeffries, a Bayo Akinfenwa and say, these are sportsmen, these are footballers, yeah, but they're them. No, it's us. It's a mindset thing. If you decide you want to do something, you can do it. Whether you earn 100 grand a week
yeah.
playing football, or whether you're a hairdresser, So yeah, I love that. Well done, well done.
Well, I think it's just one of those things. I was like, well, this. Why can't I do it? Why, if other people can do it? One of the funny things, my friend had done a ride before, and there was a lady in her 70s called Margaret. So she's a bit of a legend, Margaret. And they were in Brazil, and they've never done the Brazil trip ever again because it was coastal cycling. It was grueling. And every time they came past my friend and said, do you want to get on the bus? And they asked all the girls, do you want to get on the bus? And they would be like, is Margaret on the bus? And then if they said no, then nobody got on the bus, because if Margaret could do it, we could all do it.
I love that.
Yeah, so Margaret is legendary. I think she's like 76 now, still doing these bike rides. And my friend was like, if Mike, you can't be Margaret, you can't get on the bus. And so I was like, okay, you can't get on the bus. What I did hide was that Margaret didn't get on the bus. So if I'd got on the bus, I still couldn't be Margaret anyway, but I was saving that. But one of the things, and this is an interesting one actually, I don't know if you know this lady, there's a lady called Amy Andrews that I saw. So I do a lot of stuff on a wing and a prayer. I'm very much like, oh, I can do it. Let's just get in and do it.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
I'm not known for training really hard and putting this stuff in, but I wanted to do this. And my friend put a lot of pressure on me to say, don't be Margaret, don't get on the bus. And so I was like, okay. My big fear is that I would damage myself and I would end up in the wheelchair, that I would ruin myself, that I'd done all this 12 years of mobility and stuff, and that actually I'd damage the knee to the extent that I would be in a wheelchair. So that was my balance, was, okay, I can do it. So we would, when she did this training plan, it was like 20 miles. And by the end of it was 60 miles. And I was like, oh, Jesus, 60 miles. And then we went to this festival, and there's a girl called Amy Andrews. She also was at the Olympics. Boxer, didn't start till she was 31. And someone asked her when she was on the stage and said, she probably didn't even know that she's my inspiration, to be honest. What inspires you to get up and do those hill runs in the morning when it's cold? And she said, nothing, nothing at all. But I know that in 6 months' time, if I haven't done the hill runs, I'm going to get in the ring, I'm going to get punched in the face, I'm going to lose, and it's going to be my fault. And that resonated with me massively. And I was like, okay, if you want to do this, if you don't put the work in and you end up on that bus and you're miserable, it's no one's fault but your own. Literally my own fault. So that's what got me up. That's what made me cancel the parties, cancel the festivals, cancel the barbecues all through last summer, because we were training early in the morning at 5 o'clock, going out and cycling. Would we say, no, I'm going to stay home and sit in my little lazy spa in the garden and miss out on loads of stuff, because I was like, if I don't put the work in, I'm literally going to be so upset when I get there. And it's mad, but that's what resonated in my head.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like when you maybe if you'd have heard that 3 years before or 10 years
Yeah, I wouldn't
before,
have read it.
it would have just But we go through things in our life, and then when we go, certain things hit when they're supposed to hit, don't they?
Yeah,
I've been told I'm a sucker. I've got to be told a million times before it kind of sometimes not always. Sometimes I've got to be told a million times before the penny drops, and it just shows that like when you're ready to absorb the information, the knowledge,
yeah.
that's when you can't force that. You can't force that. So how hard was the bike ride?
The training was hard. The bike ride was how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's how I did the bike ride. So the first bit in the
Oh, I
morning,
love that. I love
yeah.
that so much.
Oh, so you did the first. I mean, I got on my bike. My bike, it was a brand new bike, right? And I was wobbly and I was embarrassed. I thought, oh, not all these girls, there's like another 10 girls, knew what they were doing. One of them had a spreadsheet for every outfit she had for the day. They were professionals. I spent the summer I bought some shorts, some cycling shorts, the padded ones, and I bought those in the summer. My friend said to me, "They're a bit see-through," and I was like, "I don't know. They've got the padding, they're fine, they're comfortable." And it wasn't until August when I ordered some more for India, and I did, like to buy the 10 that you need. And the next shorts that came were mesh. So I thought, that's weird. Went onto Amazon, and I'd cycled in these shorts like a lot. Went onto Amazon, and I discovered that when you put padded ladies cycling shorts in, there's also padded ladies underwear cycling shorts. And I've been cycling in underwear for months and months around the Cotswolds.
Oh, goodness me.
Yeah. So when people are beeping, I do have a tattoo at the base of my spine, and they can see the tattoo. So I'm not a professional cyclist in any way, shape or form. My friend had to show me how to change gears properly. So the training was eye-opening. And so when I got on my bike, I thought I'll just go around the corner and see if it works. And of course they were brand new. These Indian people had bought them on the train. And I went to like turn the handlebars, it turned and nothing else turned. So it wasn't screwed on properly. So I didn't start good. Then we went out onto the road, and the road was incredible. There's cows in the road, there's tuk-tuks, everything you'd think about India, lorries, bikes with folklore music coming out of them and the washing and all the stuff. And my handlebars started to turn. So instead of being like this, by the time I got down the road, they were like this because they weren't screwed on properly. So I was like,
Oh,
the guy had to stop and put a spanner on and then go across. So that was my first day cycling, and that was a real culture shock because I got to the roundabout and he was like, "Pedal, don't stop." I still have a fear on the roads, and I had all this traffic coming towards me, and I froze for a second, and he was like, "Pedal, pedal, pedal." And when I got to the other side, he's like, "If you give him a tiny gap, there's suggestions for road safety in India, and they're just suggestions, they're not rules." So he said, if you get a gap, they'll just fill it, and you just stayed there for the rest of the day. So that was kind of the beginning. And then, so the next day we started off on a ride, did the 17K, paced myself at the back, which they said was fine, and got to the first break, and this truck turned up with all music on it, and they got off and did all this dancing. The whole village came out and cheered and danced with us. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to think about this from one to the other. So that's 17K, do that. Then the next bit up to lunch, do that. Then, and so on and so on. So I did the first day, and then I got to the top of the hill just before we were getting to the hotel, and I didn't do my gears properly and got off and walked. And the guy just like, "You could have done that. You literally could have done that." And the next day was 94K. And so I freaked. I was like, "Oh, it's 94K tomorrow. How am I going to do that?" I could 64. I struggled. 94, that actually turned out to be 100. And I just thought, the biggest thing, as with training, is I knew I could cycle 50 miles because I've done it in this country. I didn't know if I could cycle 50 miles 5 days in a row. And that was my challenge, was could I do that 5 days in a row when you've got muscle fatigue or some sort of injury or you're aching and stuff like that. So that was my thing. So I just chunked it down, literally how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. So I took each section. And then everybody cheered, like everywhere we went. People came out of their houses and cheered and clapped, or the little kids just laughed because they thought we were insane. These blonde ladies, like everyone took pictures of us. I'm probably TikTok, God only knows where. But the support was immense all the way through. So even if you were struggling, what do you do? These people are just clapping. They got nothing. They got a mobile phone and no roof on their house. I don't know where they charge their phones. But they were just, everybody came out of the house. You went through the villages, and the people came out of the shops, and they just cheered all the way through. 360 kilometers. They went like, and I suppose one of the redeeming moments was like, I caught up with the girls, and as we went past a camel, the call was passing camel, passing camel. So everyone was telling them, well, how many times do you get to say that in your life? Passing camel, passing camel. So there was loads of funny bits. There was some really nice girls that I did it with. I just couldn't believe it day by day. Literally every day I was like, this is the day that it's going to collapse. This is the day that I'm going to get injured, or this is the day that I'm going to run out of energy. And every day I just had a little bit more.
Why did you have those negative thoughts? Why did you think it was every day was going to be a bad thing?
I don't know really. I suppose I just couldn't, because these guys were quite fair. Like, I'm still overweight, I started that journey. I thought I'd be skinny, from the training. I thought I'd get belly and I'd be even skinnier. And I thought I'd come back from India size 10. None of that happened. None of that worked. So I'm still sitting there, had an incident where I cycled through a village, and these boys were coming out of school and my shorts rolled down. and they chased me through the village, taking pictures and laughing at me. So, you know, I was never the ideal cyclist at all. And so I just kept thinking, God, these legs are going to give up, or
But they never did.
no, they
They
never
never
did.
did.
They never did.
So when you crossed the finish line, when you completed this mammoth challenge, what did you learn about yourself?
You can do anything you want. I
Mm.
kind of already knew that you can do anything you want, but I just believe my physicality would hold me back. And so I, I mean, when I crossed there, the, it was just incredible. It was incredible. It was chased up a hill by monkeys, by an old lady, like the monkey's trying to take the garland off you. This lady's trying to take the bike off you and push it. And so that very, very last bit. And I just wanted it to go on forever. It's one of those things. I wanted it to finish, but I didn't want it to finish.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever had
Yeah.
that.
Oh well, yeah, I get, yeah, definitely. I think what you like, you were worried about the physicality aspect, but I believe
Mm,
that the mindset, the mentality, people listening to this, I'm pointing to my head right now, is stronger than the body,
yeah.
right? And if this wants it, and your legs are tired from cycling or from whatever you're doing, from running, if this wants it bad enough, this will make the legs get you over the finish line. The mind is so powerful, and the mind will give up before the body if you allow it. And if you train the mind right, it will be in control of your body, and it will take you there. We're capable as human beings of way more
Mm,
than we give ourselves credit for. There's a saying, I'll butcher it, but like, we only know how strong we are when we're forced to be it. When we've
yeah,
got nothing left but being strong. That's how we know how
absolutely.
strong we are. And that is the same in when you're lying in a hospital bed and you're determined to kind of get better and be successful. But that's so inspiring. A couple of little things before we wrap up today. Moments. Now I'm now a professional wrestler, and wrestling is obviously, you had to retire from boxing because of the eye. I'm now a professional wrestler. Wrestling is not really about winning or losing. Wrestling is performance. It's an art form.
Mm,
It's theatre in a wrestling ring. And one particular wrestler I'm very friendly with, he's a tremendous wrestler, Tommy, Malachi Black. He talked about wrestling as moments. It's not about the moves or being on the microphone saying stuff. It's about moments, and I love that. And again, wrestling, it's like life. Boxing is like life. Sports like life. Anything that we do is a microcosm of life. And in this story, in your story, there's been moments along, and that's what life's, for me, that's what life's about. Moments. It's not about the money you have in the bank. It's about the moments. That's what makes life cool. Because when you're lying on your deathbed, hopefully when we're really, really old and frail, we're going to be thinking about one time or another, I had lots of money in the bank. No, you think about the moments with your
yeah.
family, or the moments on your bicycle cycling away from monkeys. You know, like,
Oh, yeah. You
is
know,
that
like
stuff.
I remember pedaling up this little hill. It's not, and I was puffing a bit, and I was just like, "What am I doing? I paid to do this. It's not even someone's paying me to do it. I paid to do this." And this lady walks over in a beautiful sari with 5 sewage pipes on her head, and she's barefoot. And I'm like, "Oh, Deb, get over yourself. You know, this is her everyday life." You know, you see that, or you see people picking at the side of the roads, or the kindness we had. We didn't get the begging that I expected to get. I thought there'd be a lot of poverty, and there wasn't in that type thing. But because of how we, you know, we did the Golden Triangle, so we were from the Taj Mahal to Rajasthan. So it's the Rajasthan tour. So we did a lot that wasn't on the main road. So we went through farmland, and we went, and you saw the difference of, like, even from like the cast, the skin color in certain areas to where it went. And it was the most amazing bits for me was the cycling. I was always at the back. I never tried to be at the front, but I was only about 10 minutes behind everybody else. And they were fine with that. They had to just wait for me for the breaks, but they said that was okay. So I did it at my pace. That I had a fantastic guide called Henk who was like, Deb, I would rather that you know, we're making good time. I would rather that you saw and you experienced and you stopped for a chai latte and spoke to the locals, or he went off and bowled cricket with some lads in the field one time and then pedaled to keep focusing. I'd rather you did that than just pedal madly to get to the hotel and don't enjoy
Yeah.
the experience. So I really took that on board and was just like, if I can only ever do this once, then I want the whole experience. I want to kind of remember everything. And so just that, I love physicality. I love like exercise and stuff like that. And if I'm honest, I generally thought that when I had the accident, that my physical self, from the point of view, exercise, body pump, running, was dead. That person was gone. And it was only somebody said to me a couple of years ago and said, no, she's still there. You're just sitting on her because you're too scared to let her out in case it doesn't work. So for me, it was a bit of wonder of going, oh my God, I can still do this. I can still have this in my life. It might only be this one time. I have signed up for another one. It might only be this one time, but I'm going to literally experience it from start to finish. And I really enmeshed myself into it. So I did have the doubts, but at the same time, I was like, I can just do this bit. I'm going to enjoy this bite. And if I get another bite afterwards, then I'm lucky.
That's amazing. To close, what is, go back to the moment thing I mentioned, what is one or two, a couple of really important moments in your life that has made you become the you are today?
I don't know. Do I count? Maybe those two steps? No, do you know what it is? It was the realization of what really matters. That's the most important thing, because when I thought I was going to die, I had two businesses, I was working. None of that mattered. Not having a flat stomach, I thought, oh, that don't matter. But you know, like all the things that you think are really important, when push comes to shove, they weren't. They just weren't. The only people that I cared about was my boys that live in the house with me. That's the one thing. So, you know, you have to treasure that. And yeah, of course I go back into being a workaholic and I have to pull myself back. And then the other was when I realized to stop hating myself and not doing that first 2 seconds, and said, you know what, maybe there's another reason that you're here. So there was a reason that you had that and a reason that you got saved. And I think the reason is for me to actually spread this message to say, do you know what, when you think it's as bad as it can be, it isn't. It can be better. You just have to go and look for the yes.
Yes. And which leads perfectly into the last thing I'll ask you about, your TED Talk. Your TED Talk, which you'll be doing early in the new year. What is it going to be about?
It's going to be about resilience, because I'm talking to a university, it's 20-year-olds. They're going to have to go out in the world and they're going to get a lot of no's. And it's about not worrying about the no's, not worrying about learning from the no's, knowing there's a yes, keep going, resilience. I'm going to tell some funny stories about India just because it kind of shows that you can do anything that you want to put your mind to. You know, I have a knee replacement on my left leg. I actually got injured in the gym afterwards, which is ironic. I went in the gym and my leg blew up afterwards in February this year, and learned I have no cartilage left in my leg whatsoever. My surgeon said he didn't even know how I could walk, let alone cycle and do what I've been doing. But I did it because I believed that I was okay.
Yeah.
I believed that I didn't have an injury, and I believed that I was beating their prediction of being in the wheelchair, because last year I was 55. That's the year I should have been in the wheelchair.
Every day out here, every day from now on is a bonus. You're beating them. Yeah, nice. So where can people find you and follow you at?
So if you type in Debbie Bryant into Google, I come up in a million different ways. I'm Debbie Bryant on Facebook, DebbieBryant.com on my website, Debbie Bryant on LinkedIn, all the socials there. So,
Debbie Bryant, yep.
Yeah, Debbie Bryant with a Y. And my thing at the moment, and what's happened to me over the last year, is that since I've become more visible, more opportunities have come along. So what I want everyone to remember is that stop being the best kept secret. Go out there and start talking about yourself and start talking about your life, and you will not believe the opportunities that will come to you.
I love that. Stop being the best kept secret.
Yeah.
Why do we? Why again? So I wanted to win this. Well, no, I could go on for ages. I'm trying to kind of keep this close to an hour, but that's a great thing. Why do we, as a society, why do we feel like we can't like brag about ourselves, or no, not brag, talk about ourselves? People think it's bragging, but if you've done something and you say
be proud,
you've done it, yeah. Why do we shy away from that?
I think for a lot of people is they feel like if they're just really good at something, it will find them, you know, and it doesn't work like that. You know that. You could be the best boxer in the world, but if nobody went out and promoted you, no one was going to find you. And I walked into a room at Oxford University to speak just a month ago, and there was quite a lot of speakers in there as well as other people. And I said, anyone here ever feel like the best kept secret? And 2/3 of the room put their hand up. 2/3 of the room, and some of them were speakers. They'd flown into Oxford University, they were speaking that day, and they put it up. And I think people just think, you know what, I'm brilliant at what I do. People are going to discover me. And unfortunately, we live in a really, really noisy world now with social media and the competition and everything else. And you have to just go and tell people how good you are.
Yeah.
Go and tell
If
people
you
how good you are, and then they'll start to notice you.
if you don't believe in yourself, what makes you think anybody
Yeah,
else will believe in you?
absolutely.
And now there's a difference between being loud, arrogant, brash, or backing yourself when you haven't done the work. But when I go to schools and when I deliver talks, I always say two things. There's two messages that I leave to the kids. Work hard. Work your backsides off. Because that's where your confidence comes from. When I was
Hmm.
boxing, I knew when I walked into the ring, the person who I was fighting didn't train as hard as me, didn't want it as bad as me. Maybe he was taller or faster or punched harder, but he wasn't fitter because, physicality, height, arm length, like punch power, punch speed. You can improve upon it.
You've done your homework and you put the work in.
Yeah, like some things you can improve upon, but ultimately fitness is the one thing that you can't control that. Like I can control that. I can control my fitness. I can't control how hard I can punch. Some people, Mike Tyson was born with God-given power. Muhammad
Mm.
Ali, God-given speed. You can improve, but fitness is the one thing you can make sure that you are the hardest worker in the room, as The Rock says. So, yeah, and then when I walked to the ring, knowing that I put the work in, I was supremely confident. And ultimately, the two things go hand in hand. When you work hard, you believe in yourself. When you don't work hard, when you've cut a few corners in training camp, guess what? You walk to the ring, you're not as confident. So
Hmm.
the two messages I always deliver are work really, really hard and believe in yourself. And if you work hard, you have to believe in yourself. If you
Yeah.
don't, like nobody else is gonna believe in you. And I think you've always backed yourself, Debbie. You've always believed in yourself, and I'm so proud of your own journey. And everyone listening to this, watching this, follow Debbie, follow your journey. You said you're gonna do another bike ride soon. The TED Talk will be out real soon, so hopefully I'll get hundreds of thousands and millions of views. And I just can't wait to see what you do next on your journey. And just thank you so much for being so honest today and open and sharing your incredible life with me and our lovely listeners.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure, and for every podcast, you still discover something new about yourself.
Thank you so much. What a fantastic episode. I really love Debbie's story. As I mentioned, she's a TED talker. That story has warranted a platform on the TEDx stage. Fantastic human being, a wonderful lady. Debbie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your fantastic story. I mean, I took a lot from that myself. One of the things I took was how she said, you haven't got to accept a no. There is a yes out there. If you're willing to look far enough, to work hard enough, there are yeses out there. You haven't got to accept a no. I love that. I love I love her humour. I love what she said about when just cycling through the countryside with her see-through trousers. It's nice to mix humour with the levity of such a thing that she went through. There was so much from this podcast. I hope you took so much away from it. Debbie, again, thank you so much. And we roll on next week. Another great podcast, another great inspiring story for one of my fantastic guests. So until then, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, this week you might suffer setbacks this week. I've had some setbacks this week, some quite big setbacks. And sometimes it might feel easy to give up. And I urge you never give up. Like Debbie said, if you get a million no's, there's always a yes out there if you're willing to work hard enough and to look far enough. So until then, if you find yourself on the floor, remember to always get back up, and I'll see you next week.